Okay, so what is on the interwebs today?
It's time to try something new, and maybe our best way of ensuring that everybody has a base level standard of living is just to give them a monthly income, no strings attached. This is called the Universal Basic Income, or UBI.
Yo, 2 cents.
Yes?
You want to help me out on a video?
I don't know if I have the time. I have patron requests to get to, my monthly collab with Night Shift.
Riley Dennis is spreading communist propaganda.
Well, why didn't you say so?
Hey everybody, and welcome back. So another good use for the avatar is it'll make it easier to respond to our favorite talking neck, Riley Dennis. Seriously, those jump cuts are fucking annoying, and freeze frame will be easier for me to edit in versus trying to cut out those jump cuts. Anyway, let's hear why Riley thinks we should give everyone free money. And joining me to take on this monstrosity of an idea is my 2 cents.
As always, here to bring you my 2 cents. And on the topic of UBI, I have got a lot to say.
So, I have this radical leftist idea that nobody should die just because they can't get a job.
Now, as a blanket statement, I would agree with that, but when you get into details about why they can't get a job, that's when we start to find reasons why certain people deserve what comes to them.
And although I know there are figures on the political left and political right who have historically argued for a UBI, I have to say that for once I agree with you, Riley. The principles underlying the concept of a UBI come from the radical left.
I know, it's really out there, wild stuff that could just never be accepted in the mainstream, but hear me out.
Funny you should ask us to hear you out when you refuse to hear out anyone to the right of Stalin, but considering I'm more tolerant of ideas I disagree with than you are, carry on.
What if we just guaranteed everyone a base standard of living? Food, water, shelter, that sort of thing. That way, people wouldn't have to be homeless and wouldn't have to starve.
Sounds great on paper, but if you seriously think that would eliminate homelessness and starvation, then you have more mental issues than we previously thought.
And who gets to decide what a base standard of living is? How much is enough? These are questions that need to be answered. And further, when you say, what if we just gave them money? Nothing in life is free. Someone actually has to give the money. Or when it comes to UBI, it's really more someone has to take the money.
Because whatever we're doing right now, it's not working.
Funny that, because the same system that you would use to establish this bullshit idea is the same system that is causing the current system to not work, aka the government.
So many people are homeless or face food insecurity. It's time to try something new. And maybe our best way of ensuring that everybody has a base level standard of living is just to give them a monthly income, no strings attached.
Get this through your head, Riley. Nothing in life comes free. Someone pays. Therefore, there's no such thing as free money, and it's certainly not the case that there are no strings attached.
This is called the Universal Basic Income, or UBI.
Sounds like an STD.
And it's been gaining traction for a while now. Small trials have been put into place in various cities, and more people are seeing it as a viable way to ensure that everyone has a base standard of living. The basic idea behind UBI is simple. Every person deserves to survive. And in our current system, that means they need money for food and shelter and basic necessities. It's a simplified version of the welfare system where every month the government just writes a check to every resident, regardless of their income or job status or anything like that.
Here's the issue with that, you twig with hair. You're basically saying that they all deserve this money because they exist, and no one deserves anything for existing. Not to mention doing a welfare system for everyone in the fucking country isn't going to solve anything. It's going to cause all of the problems that welfare causes, but on a nationwide scale. Problems like no incentive to work, an endless cycle of poverty, and stealing all of this money from those who are working their asses off to provide for their families, who are all likely against this plan due to the fact that they don't want to fund the lazy.
Do you have a citation where your viewers can find the results of all these test trials you're talking about, Riley? Why don't you check out my video, Free Money Not, UBI Debunked. In it, I provide some real academic citations with information about how a UBI actually works.
What this does is it guarantees everyone has their basic needs met. Everyone can survive.
There are over 100 million people that would disagree with that statement if they weren't, well, dead.
As it stands in our current system, if you don't have money for rent, you get evicted and become homeless. If you don't have money for food, you starve. And obviously, we have some measures in place to counteract this.
Yeah, we do. It's called Get a Fucking Job!
The US runs a bunch of various welfare programs. Private organizations and nonprofits often work to help homeless people in various cities, and we have things like food banks to help people who face food insecurity.
Now, out of the three systems you mentioned, which ones have the highest success rate of combating poverty? And which one has the highest rate of fucking it all up?
I doubt Riley knows the answer, but the facts speak for themselves. The government has spent more than $22 trillion combating poverty ever since Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty began, and the poverty rate has remained stagnant. In fact, there's a good case to be made that welfare has actually halted the downward trend that existed before the War on Poverty began.
And while all these programs can help some people, they can't help everyone.
You're forgetting the fact that some people don't want the help because they actually work for a living and don't feel the need to mooch off of other people.
And that means that many people still live in poverty, still can't find a stable place to live, or still can't reliably put food on the table. And that's a problem, because as a society, we should want everyone to be doing okay. We should want everyone, at the very least, to be able to survive.
And I agree. Which is why 2 Cents and I both speak up against the communist bullshit that people like you and Ocasio-Cortez try to push.
If you want everyone to be able to survive, the best thing you can do is to support unfettered, free market capitalism. That's what produces the highest standard of living and the lowest poverty rates. UBI and other socialist policies lead you down the road that gives you Venezuela.
If you don't want that, I think you have bigger issues to work through that I can't really address in this video.
You are literally the last person that should be telling anybody that they have issues, Mr. Male Lesbian.
But assuming you want everyone to be doing okay, UBI could be one really good method for doing that. Because, for one, our current systems have too many strings attached. To be accepted into one of the US government's many welfare programs, you need to go through a lot of bureaucracy and meet a lot of specific requirements.
Because we don't want just anyone taking free government gibs, you fuckhead. The point of the welfare system was to eliminate the need for its existence, not to put more people on it.
And while a UBI might require less government legwork than the current welfare system, it still doesn't change the fact that a UBI of just $10,000 a year would cost between $1 and $2 trillion in the United States. In 2017, federal tax revenues were about $3.3 trillion. So, yeah.
And the government will be watching you closely to make sure you don't ever slip up. Because if you do, they're taking those benefits right back.
Because those benefits are a privilege, not a right. If you borrow someone else's money for a specific purpose, you are supposed to use the money for that purpose. So when you find some jackass taking their welfare check and spending it on drugs, tattoos, and booze when it's supposed to be for food and necessities, they deserve to have those benefits cut. Just like if I gave my friend $80 to spend on their phone bill, and I find out they spent it on a new video game they wanted instead, I'm not going to loan them money next time they ask.
This is bad because not everyone can meet those requirements, and sometimes people are going to make mistakes or do things that would disqualify them from those programs.
Because the people that don't qualify are the pieces of shit that just want free shit. And I know people make mistakes, but spending the welfare money on a tattoo when it was supposed to buy winter clothing for your children isn't a fucking mistake.
That shouldn't mean their entire livelihood is revoked.
Welfare is not a livelihood! Fucking idiot!
If you give everyone a basic income, it can't be revoked for any reason. If you exist in the country, you get a basic income. No matter the mistakes you made, no matter how bad you are at dealing with bureaucracy, you get a basic income so you can survive, no matter what.
Existing isn't a fucking accomplishment, especially when that's the only accomplishment you are able to actually pull off. And we have a way for everyone to get a basic income. It's called getting a fucking job. 2 Cents, please explain capitalism to this twig before I have a fucking aneurysm.
I'll refer Riley to my video, Supply and Demand and Why It Matters, but here's the gist of it. Nothing in life comes free. Someone pays. It takes farmers to grow crops and raise the livestock that you eat. It takes engineers to build water purification facilities. It takes years of education to become a doctor or a nurse. Saying you have a right to food, water, healthcare, or whatever else will never change the fact that people have to expend time and labor for these things to exist. Does Riley really think that farmers, doctors, and engineers have an obligation to spend their time and labor on people who give them nothing in return? And by the way, what are you going to say to the UBI recipient who blows it all at the casino and then can't feed his family? Doesn't he have a right to exist?
Now, one of the things that people often worry about when it comes to UBI is the incentive to work.
Because that incentive disappears when you have an income coming in due to the fact that you exist. It's the reason the current welfare system is an utter fuck-up.
Yeah, and as a result, products and services will go up in price since there's now a smaller labor force to produce them. The irony is that as more people leave work due to their receipt of a UBI, the more prices will rise, and thus their UBI will leave them no better off than they were before. This is a problem Hilmar Schneider noted in his peer-reviewed paper on the topic.
A lot of people have this idea that work is something people only do because it allows them to survive, and they believe that if you take away that incentive, people will stop working.
And you should note that even if not everyone stops working, it's unlikely that they will be as productive as they otherwise would have been. This is because in any socialist redistribution scheme, the more productive you are at your work, the more penalized you are in the form of your profits being confiscated and given to people who aren't as productive.
I just don't think that's true.
Oh, you just don't think it's true. Well, that's a convincing argument. Seriously, how are you still alive when you clearly don't have the brain capacity to remember how to breathe on a regular basis?
Working isn't always just about earning money to survive. Many people work because it's something to do, because it gives them a sense of accomplishment, because of the status it brings them, because it allows them to socialize with coworkers, because it's a creative outlet, or it's just something they enjoy. There are a lot of reasons that people work beyond money, and I think there's no way that if you gave everyone a basic income that they would all just stop working.
Oh my god, it got worse. Okay, let's start with a small job. I guarantee that if you walk into any McDonald's and told them that they would get a basic income that covered their basic cost of living, that McDonald's would be damn near deserted before you could say, "I'll have fries with that." No one wants to work at McDonald's in most cases. They work there because it's an easy job to get, and compared to a lot of other professions, it's an easy job to do. And before anyone tries to tell me different, I worked at a McDonald's for a year and a half, and it wasn't anything that deserved more than minimum wage. Anyway, now let's talk about bigger jobs. The reason jobs like oil rigging, power line work, and other dangerous jobs pay more than jobs like McDonald's is because the employer needs to provide incentive for someone to work in those fields due to how dangerous the work is. Now, some people decide to take the risk associated with those jobs because they might as well bring home a good paycheck if they're gonna work for a living. If they have an income coming in due to simply existing, where are they going to get the incentive to work? If you grow up in a society where you know for a fact that you're going to have all of your needs met thanks to the fact that you exist, why would you consider looking for a job? I know a guy that lived in an area that had a very high population on welfare. He told me that the children of those families had no aspirations. They planned to just get the same government assistance that their single 12 children by 14 dads' mothers were getting. One more reason incentive drops is you have to supplement UBI with tax money. Therefore, the people that would work those jobs would lose 60% or more of their money to pay for the majority of people who would be too lazy to work. If you want to give 60% of your income to lazy fucks, knock yourself out. But I earned that money. I want to keep it to pay for shit that I want and need. Anyway, that was kinda long-winded and I apologize, but let's get back to this video.
Would you?
I'm a bit of a workaholic, so probably not.
I wouldn't.
X to doubt.
I mean, you can see an example of this in the world today, that lots of rich people who have enough money to sit on for the rest of their lives, they continue working.
Because they have a lot of luxury items and fancy fucking houses that aren't going to pay for themselves. Seriously, do you think that once a person becomes rich, they have all the money in the world and never have to work again? Because if you do, you should really shut the fuck up, as you clearly have no fucking idea how economics work.
There's also something called liquidity. Rich people don't stay rich by burying their money in the backyard. They do so by investing in equities, bonds, and other securities that allow for economic growth and more jobs for everyone.
And clearly, at that point, it isn't about the money. Some folks who have retired still continue to work in some form. Sure, some people might stop working, but that's not the end of the world. They would definitely be a small minority of people, and we always have a small percentage of folks who aren't working. That's what the unemployment rate is.
Yes, but the question is, why aren't they working? Some people are unemployed because they recently got laid off but are looking for work and will be employed again within a few weeks. Some people are unemployed because they are contractors and currently between contracts. Some people are unemployed because they're over 65 years old and retired, living off their pension or net worth. And yes, some people are unemployed because they are lazy pieces of crap who don't work. But your analysis about the reason for unemployment is lacking, to say the least.
But actually, this brings me to a related point, which is that not everyone needs to work.
Riley, everyone needs to work! For fuck's sake, no one has the right to be lazy and funded by the hardworking taxpayers. Now, I don't care what you do for a living, and I wouldn't go so far as to say everyone needs to work a hard labor job. But, for example, you have the right to make money making your bullshit videos, as there is an audience for them, and obviously 398 dumbasses want to support your work.
I might do a whole video on this eventually, but I'll give you the short version. We seem to have this idea that an ideal society is one where 100% of the population is working, but there's no need for that.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Let me put it this way. Just because it's technically true that some people are productive enough that they could pay a salary to others who don't work, doesn't mean that people who don't work are entitled to the fruits of other people's labor. If I want something from you, I better be prepared to do something for you. Do you think your patrons would keep donating to you if you stopped making videos?
For society to function, we don't need 100% of the population to be working. This isn't the olden days where everyone has to raise their own crops. Today, wealth is concentrated in the hands of a relatively small percentage of the population. So all we have to do is redistribute that wealth to everyone else, and we have enough to get by.
Shut up! You fucking idiot.
Riley, nobody has the right to any of the wealth held by the wealthy, except for the person that earned that wealth. You are only entitled to the money that you earn by selling your labor for a wage, or running a business that caters to a specific need for the population. And besides that, if you think that redistributing the wealth is going to eliminate wealthy people and stop poverty, then your brain obviously committed suicide a long fucking time ago.
Your idea has been tried, Riley. Every time a country decides to redistribute the wealth from the rich to the rich stop being productive, and within a few years, everyone is poor. Look no further than Venezuela or Brazil to see this in recent history.
You don't need to make people do pointless jobs just because you think everyone needs a job.
I've never said everyone needs a job. You don't have to work if you don't want to, but you're also not entitled to other people's things simply for existing.
The only people I would argue deserve free handouts are the soldiers who defended our country and were rendered disabled during their services, and that is because they earned those handouts. Aside from that, what the fuck gives anyone the right to a free handout without doing anything to earn it when you fund those handouts by stealing that money from those who do work?
Because the truth is, they don't. And if they want a job, which I'm betting a lot of people will, they can find something that they enjoy doing, like something creative or something that helps other people, instead of some repetitive, boring task created just for the sake of there being an official job for the person.
Jobs are not a social construct, you fucking brain-dead, cross-dressing llama. Jobs are created by supply and demand. If there's a demand for a job, someone can supply the labor for that job and earn a wage in exchange for their time and labor. Fucking hell, I'd ask how you can manage to top this level of stupid, but at this point I can't be surprised if you did so in this same fucking video again.
And the need for us to recognize that jobs aren't essential is growing fast because of automation. Robots are taking over a lot of the more dangerous and tedious jobs, and that's really good for keeping people safe and freeing up people's time. But that also means that if nothing changes, those newly unemployed folks are gonna be in a lot of trouble.
And that's why we should let the free market take over. If the free market was in charge, we could replace those jobs with new ones. Look, this socialist bullshit you're pushing isn't the answer. All socialism does is make everything worse. See Venezuela and those 100 million people I mentioned earlier if you need proof. And while I'm thinking about it, does anyone find it odd that someone like Riley, who despises the current president and his cabinet, is so eager to give him and said cabinet control over every aspect of our lives? I don't know about you, but when I don't trust someone, I don't tend to put them in charge of any aspect of my life.
That's where UBI comes in. Automation is already taking people's jobs, but instead of fighting that and keeping people in boring, repetitive jobs, a solution that wouldn't work for very long, we could instead embrace automation and give everyone a basic income. We could get people out of those dangerous, meaningless jobs and free up their time to do other stuff. Right now, lots of people have a hard time being creative or entrepreneurial because they're just fighting to make rent month by month.
So the fuck am I, but I'm still creative. That is literally a personal problem, not a problem caused by someone having a job.
With that burden lifted off of them, imagine all of the new, amazing art and literature and other projects that people could come up with. They could create beautiful, amazing things, or they could start organizations that help people, or any other number of things.
Hang on, you human contradiction. If the point of a UBI is to ensure no one needs help and has their needs met, then why the fuck would we need organizations to help people? Seriously, do you think about words before they just fall out of your cock holster?
Probably not.
The potential is out there, and a lot of people just don't have the time or energy to do it when they're trying to survive.
They're not crawling through the jungle trying to hunt food. They're working a certain job for a certain amount of hours during the day, and then they go home. They can be creative, it just boils down to time management, and if you can't accomplish that, I assume whatever creative shit you think you can come up with isn't that good to begin with.
Do you have any idea how many poor people with good ideas have become billionaires thanks to free market capitalism? Just take a look at someone like Jeff Bezos. A lot of people forget that Amazon started out as an online bookstore back in the 1990s. Not saying it's easy, but it can be done. The question is, how much are you willing to sacrifice in pursuit of success?
And in some cases, there will be dangerous or gross jobs that can't be done by robots. And in those cases, a UBI would give workers the ability to demand safer working conditions and higher pay.
Wages are set by supply and demand. Employers can't just arbitrarily set them low. Again, see my video, Supply and Demand and Why It Matters.
Because right now, a lot of jobs have unsafe working conditions and low pay simply because employers know that people will take these jobs because they need them to survive.
The free market can take care of that problem as well. If you refuse to work for someone because their environment isn't safe, the boss will eventually have to improve the safety of that job in order to get people to work there.
But if people no longer need your job to survive, you've got to sweeten the deal. So people would still take those jobs, but they'd be much safer and better paid.
But that also means that those products and services will now be more expensive for everyone. This helps our economy. How?
Because under this system, people would still have jobs and be paid. So if money is a huge motivator for you, you can still work to earn money above the amount you get from UBI. So maybe you're wondering, how do we pay for all of this?
Before you begin, you might want to read David Friedman and Hilmar Schneider's papers on the subject.
Giving everyone a livable income every month sounds expensive, and it is, but it's definitely possible. And the main solution is to tax the rich.
We already do that, and you still haven't answered what gives you the right to have rich people's money. Honestly, I've never gotten an answer to that question that made a lick of sense.
As I already said, a UBI of just $10,000 a year per American would cost between $1 and $2 trillion. Just to give you perspective, even if we confiscated 100% of the income of every American who earns $1 million a year or more, that only produces about $1 trillion. So strictly speaking, no, just taxing the rich could not fund a UBI.
They have so much money, they hardly know what to do with it. And income inequality has been rising for years.
Yeah, and you know what corresponds perfectly with rising income inequality? Rising government interference in the free market. If you want income inequality to go down, the best thing you can do is fight for less government, you moron.
So that would be the main funding source, but also if a UBI were to be put into place, it would make a lot of welfare programs redundant. There might still need to be some much smaller programs for certain things, but the vast majority of money going to current welfare systems could be redirected into the UBI. That means that we're not just making money appear out of nowhere. We're just taking it from the rich and from the programs that we're replacing with the basic income.
So basically you want the government to be Robin Hood, stealing from the rich to give to the poor. Or in this case, the lazy.
And get real, Riley. Do you really think the government is just going to get rid of Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, just to give people $1,000 a month? How many times has the government ever abolished an existing program?
This is something we could afford.
Yeah, that's what Venezuela thought as well.
And it would actually be good for the economy because people who had been too poor to really buy much would suddenly have disposable income.
Since you clearly don't understand basic economic themes like supply and demand, you're in no position to be making judgments about whether or not something would be good for the economy. How about you cite some actual data to support your position?
And that means they'd be spending more. More spending and more demand would result in a better functioning economy.
That's capitalism, you fucking idiot! And you can't force capitalism to work by using the government to steal money from the rich and give that money to the lazy.
Well said, hey dude.
So yeah, that's the idea behind UBI. Give everyone money, allow everyone to survive, raise the standard of living for everyone, and improve the economy.
I'll believe you when you actually start citing data to support a conclusion, Riley.
It might be a while before we can get there, but I have to believe that we can do it.
Forgive me if I don't take your blind faith as evidence.
That actually sums up socialism quite well, actually. You have to make people believe it'll work in order to mask the fact that it doesn't ever work and never will. Well, anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed the video. A special thanks to my 2 cents for taking this bullet with me. I will link his channel in the description. I highly recommend you check out his channel. He makes some great content. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe and stick around. Feel free to share this video with friends and family. And you can follow me and my 2 cents on Twitter. The handles are on the screen. And I will catch y'all in the next one. Catch y'all later.